I walked downstairs wearing lace. His eyes locked on me. The room went still. Candles burning. Oil in his hands. No one moved. No one spoke. And just like that, we weren't father and daughter anymore. Before we begin, I want to warn you that this story contains mature themes. It deals with the challenges of grief, emotional confusion, and isolation within a family. If these topics make you uncomfortable, you might want to stop watching now. But if you stay, I promise you, this is real, raw, and it will stay with you. He used to be different. When I was younger, my dad laughed more. He would pick me up, spin me around, tell me stories at bedtime. He made pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. He'd whistle while folding laundry. My mom would tease him about his old rock playlists. And the three of us, we were a real family. Then my mom got sick. She was in and out of the hospital for nearly a year. The treatments wore her down. And every day, I watched pieces of her disappear, until one day, she was just gone. I was 10. I don't think we ever recovered. Not really. After that, the light left our house. The colors faded. The rooms felt colder, even in the summer. My dad changed. He stopped playing music. He stopped smiling with his eyes. He still made breakfast, still helped me with school projects, still showed up when he could. But the warmth wasn't there. He started working from home, and then slowly, he just stayed home. No dates. No outings. No new friends. He had coworkers, I guess. But I never saw them. Just emails. Deadlines. Late nights with the glow of a laptop lighting up his face. I grew up faster than I should have. I became responsible. I stayed out of trouble. Kept my grades up. Took on every club, every sport, every team, because staying busy felt better than coming home. My weekdays were stacked to the ceiling: cheerleading, volleyball, AP classes, school events. I was exhausted. But being exhausted was easier than feeling empty. That's the thing no one tells you about grief. Sometimes it doesn't hit all at once. Sometimes it lingers. Stretches itself across years. And by the time you notice it, it's already reshaped everything. My dad, Murphy Barker, was 43. But he looked older. Not in his face, but in the way he carried himself. The silence around him. The way he'd forget to eat unless I reminded him. He'd always been smart, focused. But after my mom, he was like a man floating through his own house. He didn't really talk unless he had to. He was always in sweatpants. Always in his office. Always tired. And then there was me. Savannah Barker. 19. Trying to hold everything together. People thought I was the perfect student. Always smiling. Always composed. I was the girl that parents pointed at and said, "Why can't you be more like her?" But inside, I was worn thin. I spent my mornings on a field. My afternoons on a court. My nights on homework. I didn't sleep much. I didn't have time to cry. We weren't close anymore. Not like before. My dad and I lived in the same house, but we didn't talk unless it was about bills or schedules or who needed the car. Our connection faded so slowly, we didn't even notice. Until one night, a few months ago, when he noticed how sore I looked after practice. I was slumped on the couch. I didn't say anything. Just let out this soft groan as I tried to take off my sneakers. He walked over. Sat down beside me. And he said, "You want me to rub your shoulders?" It caught me off guard. I hadn't heard that tone from him in years. Soft. Familiar. Human. I nodded. And he did. That was the first time we'd really touched, like really, in a long time. No rushed goodbye hug. No quick pat on the back. This was quiet. Intentional. Gentle. That was the start of it all. A tired daughter. A lonely father. A quiet house. And a moment that felt like comfort, even if it didn't stay that way. The second time he offered, it felt natural. I had just come back from a long away game. My legs were aching. I was slumped over the kitchen counter eating cold leftovers when he walked in. Long day? I just nodded. He didn't say much. He walked behind me and placed his hands on my shoulders. Started to rub again. The same way he had the first time. Slow. Careful. It didn't feel weird. Not then. That became our routine. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. After practice. After dinner. Sometimes right after I walked in. If I looked tired, he didn't even need to ask. He'd just motion toward the couch. I'd drop my bag and follow. It started with the shoulders. Then the upper back. Then my arms. My calves. My feet. Nothing strange. Just long, slow massages. I'd still be in my practice clothes, sports bra, shorts. I never thought twice. I'd always dressed like that around the house. He'd seen it all before. It was never an issue. Until it started to feel different. I think it was around the 5th or 6th time. He brought out a towel. Laid it out across the couch cushion before I sat down. Said it would be more comfortable. Then he brought out a bottle of oil. It wasn't anything fancy, just something from the cabinet under the bathroom sink. But it caught me off guard. It'll help with the soreness, he said. I didn't argue. My shoulders were stiff. My legs were tight. The oil smelled like lavender. Then he dimmed the lights. I remember thinking, okay, this is new. But I didn't question it out loud. I think part of me didn't want to break whatever this was. It was the only time during the week he and I actually connected. The only time we weren't just passing each other like ghosts in the hallway. The more it became a habit, the more effort he put into it. He started lighting candles. He played soft music, no lyrics, just calming sounds, like what you'd hear in a spa. He even brought a small heating pad once, said it would help my muscles loosen up. I told myself it was sweet. Thoughtful. Maybe this was his way of taking care of me again, like when I was little. I tried to see it that way. I tried to hold on to that version of the story. But I started noticing things. The way his hands would linger a little longer. Not inappropriate. Not exactly. But long enough for me to notice. He wasn't rushing through it anymore. He took his time. Each session lasted longer than the last. Then there were the questions. First, they were small. Innocent. Are you eating enough? How's school? Then he got more personal. Do you like anyone? Are the guys on your team respectful? I'd laugh him off. Roll my eyes. Say, Dad, stop. But he didn't. One night, out of nowhere, he asked if I was still a virgin. I froze. He said it softly, like it was just a passing thought. But it wasn't. Not to me. I didn't answer right away. Just looked at him, confused. He laughed it off, said he was just being protective. Said he just wanted to know I was safe. But it stayed with me. Another time, he asked if I'd ever been in love. Then later, do you think you're beautiful? I didn't know what to say. I was 18 when the massages started. 19 by the time they got regular. I knew how to read people. I knew when something had weight behind it. And those questions? They weren't casual. I started watching him more closely. Watching his face when I walked in. Watching how quiet he got when I changed in the next room. Watching how long his eyes stayed on me when I laid down. Still. I didn't stop him. Maybe I didn't want to be alone either. Maybe I liked the attention. The care. It wasn't sexual. Not then. It was something else. Something heavier. Something I didn't have words for at the time. Part of me was flattered. Part of me felt like, finally, someone noticed me. Not as the girl on the field. Not as the one who had it all together. Just me. Just Savannah. Tired. Run down. Needing someone. But another part of me felt something else. An itch under the skin. Like something wasn't quite right. I'd feel it when I looked at the flickering candles. When I caught my own reflection in the living room mirror. When his voice lowered a little too much. Or when his hand moved just slightly slower near my waistline. That's when the conflict started. In my head. One voice said, "He's just being kind. He's your dad. He's just trying to be close again." The other said, "This is not normal." The problem was, I didn't know which one to believe. He wasn't forcing anything. He didn't say anything inappropriate. He didn't touch me in a way that made me pull away. And yet, it felt like something had already shifted. It wasn't a moment. It wasn't a single night. It was a slow change. Like fog rolling in. You don't notice it until you can't see 5 feet in front of you. At first, I rolled my eyes. I brushed it off. But deep down, I understood. He was starved for connection. And maybe, so was I. It was a Friday. I remember that part clearly. The school day was long, but the real weight came from practice. We had a full scrimmage, followed by back-to-back drills. My legs were shot. My arms felt like stone. And still, I couldn't stop thinking about that night. Not the one coming. The one I was planning. That whole week, something had been building in my head. A mix of questions and feelings I didn't want to name. I kept picturing the way he looked at me the last time he massaged me. How careful he was. How quiet. He never looked away. That gaze didn't feel fatherly anymore. But it wasn't lust either. It was something more confusing. Like he saw me, but not the version of me I knew. It made my stomach twist. Not from fear, but from something I couldn't describe. I wanted to test it. I wish I could say I didn't plan it. But I did. When I got home, I showered like I always did. But this time, I didn't put on the usual old tank top and shorts. I stood in front of my dresser for way too long. Looking at drawers I never opened. Lingerie I had bought as a joke with friends. Something I never wore. I picked the black lace set. It felt like I was in a fog. Like I wasn't really inside my body. I did my hair. I sprayed perfume. I checked myself in the mirror 3 times. Then once more at the top of the stairs. When I walked into the living room, I stopped breathing for a second. The room was dim. He had already set it up, towel across the couch, candles on the shelf, oil bottle on the side table. The music was already playing. Something slow. The kind of track that just hangs in the air. He looked up when I entered. And he froze. His mouth parted just slightly. His eyes dropped, then came back up quickly, like he wasn't sure where to look. I watched him swallow. Not a word came out. That silence was louder than anything he could have said. He motioned for me to lie down. Quietly. Almost afraid. I could feel his hesitation from across the room. Still, I walked forward. Each step felt like I was stepping into something I couldn't undo. I laid down on the towel. Face down. Back arched just enough for him to see what I was wearing. His hands hovered above my back for a few seconds. I felt the heat from his palms, but he didn't touch me right away. When he finally did, it was with more pressure than usual. Slower strokes. Long movements across my shoulders, then down my spine. He didn't say anything. Neither did I. It wasn't the massage that made the moment different. It was everything around it. The candles. The silence. The breathing. The way my heart wouldn't slow down. And the way his hands didn't tremble, but his voice would've, if he used it. He stopped at my waist. Paused there. His hands didn't move lower, but they didn't move away either. I wanted to say something. I didn't. I thought he would. He didn't. We stayed like that for a while. Frozen in a moment that felt like it was waiting for someone to break it. I didn't. He didn't. Eventually, I whispered, "You can keep going." He shifted his weight. I heard his knees crack slightly. He kept the oil in one hand and rubbed my thighs. No words. No sound except the soft music playing in the background and the flicker of the candles. I felt his touch slow even more as he moved up toward my hips. Then he stopped. And then, nothing. He stood up. I heard the couch creak. I didn't turn around. I just laid there. My cheek pressed to the towel. My fingers curled into the fabric. We didn't kiss. We didn't touch in the way people assume. But in that moment, we crossed every line that ever mattered. It was all silent. It was all emotional. It was all real. When I sat up minutes later, he had stepped out of the room. I think he needed space. I think he didn't trust himself to look at me again. I walked to the hallway mirror. And for the first time, I didn't recognize the girl staring back. She looked older. Confused. Almost angry. But not at him. At herself. I saw someone powerful. Someone who knew exactly what she was doing. But also, someone completely lost. That night, we didn't speak. I went to my room and locked the door, not because I was scared, but because I didn't know what we had just done. Or what we had allowed. I didn't cry. I didn't journal. I just stared at the ceiling, wondering what came next. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't about a massage anymore. This was something else. Something we never should have let grow. The morning came. I hadn't slept. My eyes were dry, but my body felt heavy. Like I'd carried something through the night that wouldn't let go. The sun was already up. I could hear birds outside the window. Life continued like nothing had happened. But everything had. I walked downstairs like I always did. Except this time, I watched every step. I moved slowly. Like walking too fast might shake something loose. He was already in the kitchen. Wearing the same hoodie he always wore on Saturdays. Pouring coffee into the same chipped mug. Not looking at me. He didn't say good morning. Neither did I. The silence between us wasn't quiet. It was full. Full of everything we didn't say the night before. Full of what we had let form between us. It sat between the countertops and the fridge. Between my heartbeat and my breath. He didn't glance up. I walked past him, opened the fridge, stared into it without seeing anything. I wasn't hungry. I didn't want food. I just didn't know what else to do with my hands. He took a sip of coffee. Still didn't speak. That should have been a relief. But it wasn't. I wished he would say something. Anything. Ask how I slept. Say the weather was nice. Pretend like we were still just father and daughter. Instead, he just left the room. I stood there for a few minutes, cold air from the fridge blowing across my knees. I let it close on its own. The day passed in pieces. We didn't eat together. We didn't speak. We didn't even exist in the same room more than twice. And each time we did, it felt like walking into a memory that neither of us wanted. But it followed us. Room to room. Hour to hour. It wasn't guilt from a single moment. It was guilt from what we'd let build over time. The quiet parts. The long looks. The routines we dressed up as care. It wasn't sexual. It was something worse. It was emotional incest. And I had let it happen. I didn't want to say the words out loud. But I had to. That night, I sat on the edge of the couch. The same couch. The towel was still folded in the corner. I picked it up and stared at it for a long time. My hands were shaking. He walked in eventually. He paused in the doorway, like he knew what this was. I didn't look up. I just said it. Did you feel something last night? He didn't answer. The silence sat between us again. I turned my head slightly. His face was pale. His eyes looked at the floor. Then, finally, he nodded. Once. It wasn't fast. It wasn't slow. It was honest. He said nothing else. And that silence? It screamed. I looked down at my knees. That was the moment it hit me. We were both broken. Just in different ways. He had been alone for too long. He had buried his grief inside silence and empty rooms. And me? I had stretched myself so thin for so long, I didn't know where my own boundaries ended. I didn't know where safety stopped and something else began. But I knew one thing now. We couldn't fix this. Not together. There was no healing here. Not between us. I stopped going home after school. At first, it was small. I'd say I had study groups. Practices that ran late. Sleepovers I hadn't planned until an hour before. My friends didn't question it. They thought I was just busy. And I was. Busy trying to not be in that house. Busy trying to find somewhere that didn't smell like lavender oil or feel like silence waiting to explode. I didn't hate him. That would have been easier. But I didn't want to be around him either. When I was home, I stayed in my room. Locked the door. Blasted music into my ears until I couldn't hear my own thoughts. When I showered, I locked the bathroom even though I never used to. I started keeping a suitcase half-packed under my bed. Just in case. I think he noticed. He didn't say anything. One night, I heard him crying in his room. It was late. I had just gotten back from a friend's house and walked past his door. He was trying to be quiet about it. But grief doesn't know how to whisper. That's when I realized something. He didn't know how to fix this either. That didn't make it better. But it did make it real. The next week, I started therapy. There was a center in town, small but clean. The woman I met with had kind eyes. I didn't tell her everything right away. Just said I'd been feeling numb. Disconnected. Confused. She asked if I felt safe at home. I didn't answer. Just shrugged. She didn't press. But she looked at me for a long time. Like she already knew. With each session, I started unpacking pieces. Not the whole thing. But enough. Enough to see how far things had gone without anyone noticing. Without me noticing. I told her how it started with kindness. With routine. With comfort. And how I couldn't tell when that comfort turned into something I didn't have words for. She said the word I wouldn't say. Grooming. I flinched. I didn't want that label. I wasn't a victim. I wasn't helpless. I had walked into those moments. I had dressed up. I had stayed quiet. But that's the part that hurt the most. I wasn't forced. I was confused. And no one should ever have to feel ashamed for trying to feel loved. Not even if the love was misplaced. I started asking myself questions no teenager should ever have to ask. Was I at fault? Did I want it? Did he? But I also began to understand something else. Loneliness isn't an excuse. And silence isn't protection. It's not okay to carry your pain into someone else's body. And it's not okay to dress up closeness as care when your intentions aren't clear, even to yourself. I found out later that he started therapy too. I didn't ask. He didn't tell me. But I heard him on the phone one night, scheduling another appointment. His voice sounded tired. But also, lighter. Like he'd finally let go of whatever he'd been holding. We don't talk much now. Not because we're angry. But because too much was said without ever being spoken. Sometimes silence is a wall. Other times, it's space to heal. We needed the space. And maybe that's the only way either of us gets better. What happened between me and my dad wasn't a love story. It was a warning. A quiet, aching reminder of what can happen when people stop speaking out loud and start living inside their pain. When loss builds a wall around you, and connection feels like the only way through, even when it's the wrong kind. He was my father. I was his daughter. But somewhere in the silence of our house, we forgot how to be those things. And the worst part? It didn't start with anything big. It started with a moment. One tired night. A shoulder rub after a long day. A quiet exchange. A routine that turned into something else. I've spent months trying to make sense of it. Looking for the moment I should have stopped it. Or the moment he should have. But the truth is, we were both too far gone by the time we noticed. And that's what makes it dangerous. It didn't feel wrong, until it did. And by then, we were already standing in the wreckage. If you've listened this far, maybe something in this story feels familiar. Maybe you've felt the weight of someone else's silence. Maybe you've questioned your own boundaries. Or maybe you've watched a line get crossed, and you didn't know what to do next. Ask yourself. What does emotional boundary crossing look like in your life? How do you define closeness? And what happens when it goes unspoken too long? Have you ever found yourself in a moment you couldn't explain, but couldn't ignore either? If you have, you're not alone. You're not broken. And you're not beyond healing. But don't keep it inside. If you've ever been lonely, don't bury it. Speak it. Because secrets grow in silence. And silence almost destroyed me. If this story stayed with you, if it made you feel something, please don't keep that to yourself. Share this video. Comment below. Tell your truth, even if it's messy. And if you haven't already, subscribe. We're building a space where nothing has to stay hidden anymore. Your voice matters here. I'll be reading.